I'm Tommy.
And I'm Mike.
And this is Crash Course. To begin, we're going to explore our first theme, interactions between humans and the environment. When humanity first developed, humans interacted with the environment as hunters, foragers, and fishers. At the launch of the agricultural revolution, humans began to exploit land as farmers. Agricultural societies grew and increased both population and the lifespan of human beings. More and more people moved into metropolitan areas, increasing trade routes, and the new forms of ideas, technology, and diseases were able to spread as well. The Industrial Revolution exploited the environment dramatically. Within the most recent decades, improvements in technology and farming techniques have both rapidly changed the environment as well as improved human populations. Now, as humans have become more aware of the exploitation of land, we've worked harder on using green methods that are better for the environment.
But enough with that boring stuff. It's time for the open letter.
Correct! Today's open letter will be addressed to the wonderful Sharkeisha. Oh Sharkeisha, the way you punched that girl in World Star has changed my life in more ways than you'd imagine. Your rise to overnight fame has brought plenty to offer for American pop culture, and has really set the bar high for viral videos. Sharkeisha, to me, you'll always be better than Shovel Girl.
Emily, don't.
Okay, but how exactly does Sharkeisha fit into the 5 themes of history?
Well, the second theme we'll be discussing is the development and interaction of different cultures, and since Sharkeisha is such a big part of pop culture...
I guess that makes sense. So let's segue into our next theme. As populations, cities, and ultimately nations grew, culture became a large part of who we are. Ideas, beliefs, religions, and technology all became part of culture, and as trade expanded, people's cultures were traded with it. Cultures then began to mingle and blend with one another, and soon cultures would become so unified that it was nearly impossible, at least in some parts of the world, to tell one apart. Even today, cultures remain a large part of who we are. Although traditions vary in your culture, more nowadays, as Western culture soon took over.
Oh, don't you just love Western culture?
Not as much as I love the idea of state building, expansion, and conflict.
You know, you're right. Borders, wars, and ancient buildings are so much more interesting than Miley Cyrus performing at the VMAs. Okay, maybe not, but that doesn't mean that this theme isn't just as important as well. Once metropolis cities and nation-states developed, so did governments and hierarchical systems, which have been constructed and maintained to benefit societies. For instance, the civilization of Rome was governed by a senate, but was a centralized government. And the civilization of China was governed by dynastic families with centralized power given to an emperor. Both governments varied in how they ruled, however, both also had a centralized government. Comparing and contrasting different societies is an important part of this theme. By comparing and contrasting the different regions, you can observe the various forms of state development and expansion in societies, as well as cultural, ideological, and social changes. Later on, civilizations developed into nation-states, developed nationalism, and new forms of governments and culture. This brings us to the present day, where nation-states discuss and trade daily with one another. These relations include warfare, diplomacy, and commercial and cultural exchanges. Okay, it's that's cool and all, but how did, old people used to, exchange their money and stuff? Because I couldn't imagine a time where I couldn't walk into Dunkin', give them $1, and in return give me a delicious iced coffee. So yeah, how did that work and stuff?
Let's add to your next theme, creation, expansion, and interaction of economic systems. To start out with, as civilizations became agricultural and developed into larger cities and states, more and more products and goods were being traded in exchange for other goods, services, and even currency. Later, as a larger demand for goods increased, the ideas of working classes grew. This created new social classes and divisions of people. Soon, new forms of economic systems developed too, such as mercantilism. This led to the era of industrialization, which created larger middle class and increased trade worldwide. Capitalism and socialism are now the main economic systems in the world, and trade is able to expand other nation-states' technology and culture.
Now to get more into detail about those social structures we mentioned earlier. And remember, this theme will always tie back to the idea of relationships among human beings. Social structures can be defined as the groupings of members of societies. They are used as a way to govern interactions between individuals and other groups. Social structures are usually crafted by kinship systems, ethnic associations, and hierarchies of gender, race, wealth, and class. Over time, social classes change and transform, especially due to shifts in the political economy, cultural expression, and human ecology.
So to summarize, the 5 themes of history are
The interactions of humans and the environment,
development and interaction of cultures,
state building, expansion, and conflict,
creation, expansion, and indirection of economics.
and the development and transformation of social structures.
All themes have common ideas such as trade, culture, expansion, technology, and environmental effect.
But most importantly, you need to remember that these themes stay constant throughout history for a reason.
They will always remain relevant to your life and the lives of the people in the future.
Observing these themes and improving on them in the real world will ultimately create a smarter, safer, and more efficient world.
Thanks for watching.
This has been Crash Course.